So, one of the great mysteries in life is, where does our money go? It always seems like the money just sort of disappears, and by the end of the month, we were, expecting to have money left over, and it's gone. In fact, maybe we're in the red, and it's not good. And we realize that if we don't do something, we're going to, end up going to jail in the poorhouse. So, in order to help us figure out where our money goes and to control it better, many people design a budget. And one of the best ways to do a budget is to actually use Google Sheets. So we're going to go and start a Google Sheet. So click on the waffle and go to Sheets. And we're just going to do a blank one. So everybody, please bring up a brand spanking new, super clean, ready to be fixed Google Sheet. And up in the top, we always want to start by very first thing, changing the title of it. So our title is going to be Annual Budget. So this is our annual budget. In fact, let's call this 2021, just in case we get into some other stuff, or maybe you've got one from before. So annual budget 2021, okay, so for this year. So just a little review about Google Sheets. Each one of these little rectangles is called a cell, and each cell is defined by a column. So our columns are letters A, B, C, D, and a row, which is numbers 1, 2, 3, 4. So this particular cell is C4. So kind of, if you've played the game Battleship, you're familiar with the concept, right? So C4 defines the cell. And we're going to talk about rows and columns and cells a little bit as we go through all of this, okay? So we're going to start right up here in A1 at the very top. And in cell A1, we're going to write the word in fixed expenses. So fixed expenses are those things that pretty much almost stay the same all the time, month after month, okay? So we're going to put in fixed expenses in there. And can enter or tab over. And in B1, we're going to start putting in our months. Now, I'm going to put in JAN, just short for January, and FEB, short for February, of course. And I could go through and do that, March, April, May, or, because I don't like to type and I'm lazy, I'm going to highlight Jan and Feb, and then down here in this little blue square, make sure you click on the little blue square and drag that across, drag it all the way over to column M. And when I let go, it's going to fill in all those other months for me, okay? Google Sheets is got some things that are really smart and built in a lot of tools to kind of make our lives easier. So for those of you like me who are lazy and typing the same thing over and over again, or repetitive stuff, Google Sheets has got some definitely great tools to help fix that. Now, I want to shrink these columns all a little bit, okay? So these columns are all, I've got way more space in here than I need, and I've got a couple more columns over here, and I don't want to have to scroll over back and forth all the time. So I'm going to go and shrink these columns. Now, I could go to each one individually, and when I hover in between the two columns, on the line between the two columns, okay, I get this little double arrow tool, and that lets me squeeze these columns over, okay? And I could squeeze that one and that one and that one. Now, however, it's kind of messy, and I'm a little OCD, so, which is kind of a bad trait for being lazy and OCD. Those don't go together very well, except they do in Google Sheets, because here's what I can do. So if I go to column B, I'm going to hold down my, let's click off that again. So I'm going to go to column B and hold down with one finger on my pad, and then go all the way across to M. So highlight. You got to go on the tops, okay? So the top of the columns where the letters are, highlight all of those. And you can see now that I've got all that in blue, which means that's all highlighted. And now if I hover over my double in tool and then hold down on the touchpad with one finger and squeeze it over with the other finger, okay? It is going to now make all those columns all smaller and all exactly the same width. So it takes care of both my lazy and my OCD all at once by allowing me to adjust those columns that way. The same is also true over here for my rows, okay? So I can come over here and say I want all my rows a little bit bigger or smaller, so I can click on that and make them a little bit bigger or smaller if I want, and that will adjust all of those, okay? Now, I don't actually want to do that, so I'm going to go back and use my undo tool or Control Z and say, oh, nope, I didn't want to do that. Let's get those back to normal size, okay? So I've got fixed expenses. I've got January, February, March, April, May, all the way to December. And over here, I'm going to put annual total. Okay, so those are the basic column headings that I want. So again, columns are our letters all the way across the top. Now we're going to put in some row headings over here. Okay, so under our fixed expenses, these are all, again, things that we have to pay every single month, or to be more specific, your parents have to pay for you every single month. So first one we're going to call rent. Could be mortgage, but we're going to call it rent. We're going to kind of make this budget for you. Well, like let's say you're 22 and you're out of the house and all of a sudden you realize that that paycheck doesn't go as far as you thought. So let's do a budget, right? So we're going to rent, and let's say you bought a car, so you got a car payment. And then of course you have your phone bill. And then you can't live without cable/internet, usually bundled together. And then you have to heat the house, which today outside it is about 4 degrees outside. So you definitely want to be heating your house. And of course, none of this works without electricity. So we've got all of these things are our fixed expenses every month that we have to pay them. And so we're going to just, underneath this, we're going to put the word subtotal. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. Okay. So hit your enter key a couple times. Let's go down, leave a couple spaces in here. And now we're going to put in variable expenses. So variable expenses are the things that vary, that change all the time. Okay, so from month to month, it's going to be different. So food, right? When we go to the grocery store, add all that stuff up. Eating out. And we want to separate those two. We'll talk about that later on, why we want to do that. Let's do clothing. And for now, we're just going to put in our toys expense, which is all the things that we love to buy, like our gaming systems and new TVs and all the other stuff that doesn't really fit in these. Okay, so these are just some very basic variable expenses and then our fixed expenses. And you can see my variable expenses got a little bit too wide for this column A. So I'm going to just, again, go up here and adjust that column and make sure that word fits in there. Okay. Now, this is what spreadsheets tend to look like. And, it's fine, but let's be honest, it's pretty boring. And it's actually a little harder to read when it's all strictly black and white. So we're going to add a little color, put a little pop in this whole thing. Okay. And to do that, we're going to start, let's do our months first. So highlight just the months. Don't highlight the top headings and get the whole thing, right? Just the months up in here, okay? And in those months, we're going to use a fill color, and let's just use, actually, we're going to kind of leave it like that. We're going to just do a light blue fill color. I believe they called that cornflower was the title in there, but something in that light blue range, okay? For fixed expense, we want our fixed expense and our variable expense, both of these, to look the same. And in order to do that, I'm going to click on fixed expense, and then I'm going to come down here and I'm going to hold down my control key and click on my variable expense. Okay. And I'm going to do a fill color of this dark red, but now it's a little bit hard to read that right in there. So I'm going to change my text color to white. And this is called kind of reversed out, is kind of the term for it. I really like reversed out for certain applications. So that's a good place to put the reversed out. A lot of times I do that reversed out in a place where you are not actually entering information. So same thing over here for our annual total. This column, we're going to highlight down here and at least get down below this area, okay? And in this, we're going to, again, do that reversed out, but this time we're going to make it black. it looks like, oh no, my letters disappeared. But if I make my letters white, okay, comes out. And this just sort of helps us to know not to type in here at all, okay, because we don't want to change that column. You'll see a little bit later on why. And let's make these basic expenses, our fixed expenses. We're going to make those all green. Fill color of a green. So pick one of these kind of lighter green ones. We don't need to go with the real dark. And we'll make these over here our variable expenses. We're going to make those yellow because, frankly, those are the warning ones. The green, like, we got to pay those, okay? That's part of living, and so they're green. They got to be paid every month. Yellow is, that's stuff that maybe we need to make some decisions on, and again, we'll talk about that a little bit more, okay? Also underneath here, we're going to put in subtotal underneath this as well. All right, so that is our basic setup for our columns and row headings, okay? One last little thing that we're going to do here, and that is under View, I'm going to click in. I want to freeze my top row, okay? So that means this row up here is always frozen. So no matter how much I go up and down, I still end up with the months in there and fixed expenses, and that's kind of helpful at times to be able to do that. In this spreadsheet, we don't tend to go so far in it, but some spreadsheets you have, lots and lots of these rows, and you need to know what the column is. And then the same thing, I'm going to go to View and Freeze, and we're going to freeze our first column over here. So again, if I scroll back and forth across, these things are still going to be there. It just makes it easy to know what I'm really dealing with. If I'm, somewhere way down here and I'm like, what is that? What is this thing about? I don't remember. So this, tells me December and it's toys. If I didn't have that, I wouldn't know that this is my December toys. It might not be on there. Okay. So freezing those. All right. That's it for doing our rows and columns. Next, we're going to actually start putting in some of those fixed expenses.